If you want performance, luxury, and a crossover SUV that looks executive, you can consider the Mercedes-Benz GLC43. Welcome to 0 to 60 Motoring. Once again, my name is Bill Otuori, and today I have a 2020 Mercedes GLC43 AMG. This is a car that we scouted for our client 2 weeks ago, and I'm excited to tell you many things about this car. If new around, consider subscribing to our channel so that you don't miss any of our weekly video reviews. If you also want to purchase a car, you can engage us via the number below so that we scout a clean car for you under our car scouting program. So let's start this review by dealing with the basics first. So what is a Mercedes-Benz GLC? In Mercedes, GL stands for SUV or crossover, and the last letter after the GL normally stands for the car where that SUV is built on. For instance, this GLC is normally built on the C-Class platform, and when you go to the GLE, it's built on the E-Class. When you look at the GLS, it's built on the S-Class, and the GLA is built on the A-Class. So you can look at this GLC like a Mercedes C-Class, but now crafted into a crossover or SUV body. The Mercedes-Benz GLC was introduced in 2015, and this car has really had a very good reception in the Kenyan market, especially in the last like 3-4 years, of course, because we buy 7-year-old cars. Traditionally, the cars that used to rule this class were the Audi Q5 and the BMW X3. But recently, the GLC is actually selling very well in the Kenyan market. So this is a Mercedes-Benz GLC43 AMG. But when you go into the market to purchase a GLC, this is not the only car you are going to get, because the GLC is served in many flavors. So someone who just wants a GLC, they'll buy something like a GLC 250, GLC 200, there is the GLC 220D, which is a diesel, or even the GLC 300. But now in Mercedes, when you want to use the name AMG, you move from 3 numbers to 2 numbers. That is why this car is a GLC 43 AMG. And basically it means this car is actually going to give you better performance than the ones with 3 numbers. If you want performance in Mercedes, you move from the 3 numbers to 2 numbers, because in Mercedes, a true AMG normally has 2 numbers. An example is this GLC 43 AMG or the GLC 63 AMG. So in Mercedes, if you see someone with the 3 numbers and they have that AMG badge at the end of those 3 numbers, you definitely know that that is a fake AMG. Speaking of AMG and performance, let's discuss what powers this car, because one of the main reasons why someone is going to purchase a Mercedes-Benz GLC 43 and not the entry levels is because of performance. Doing duty in this 2020 GLC43 is a 3-liter twin-turbo petrol V6 that spits out around 35 horsepower and a healthy 520 Newton meters of torque. Now this 2020 GLC43 is a facelift version, and one of the upgrades you're going to get if you purchase a 2020 GLC compared to the previous years is a power upgrade, because in the previous years they used to make around 365 horsepower. So there is a 20 HP power difference between the 2021 and the previous years. This 3-liter V6 is paired to a 9-speed automatic transmission that sends power to all the 4 wheels of this car via Mercedes 4MATIC all-wheel drive system. That's why you are seeing that 4MATIC badge on the trunk of this car. So when you have 385 horsepower and 520 Newton meters of torque, that tells you that this is a powerful car, and it's not really meant for the regular commuter or the average person, because this car is not the most common version around, and many people normally prefer to purchase the 250, the 220D, or even the 300. Even for those variations, many people are going to find them sufficiently powerful for their day-to-day needs. But this one, GLC 43, is meant for someone or a car enthusiast who wants extra power compared to the 4-cylinder entry-level versions. Suppose you want a rocket and you want more power over this V6, Mercedes has a V8 in the GLC 63S variation, which is actually a handcrafted engine in what Mercedes normally calls one man, one engine policy, whereby a person develops an engine. At the end of the day, you'll find their name on the engine. Let's go for a drive and see how this GLC43 drives or responds on the road, and possibly I'll tell you why you may not need a V8, that is the GLC63, and why this GLC43 will cater for your needs adequately if you are a performance junkie. This car has an adaptive air suspension, whereby the feedback you get from the suspension is dependent on the drive mode you've selected, because on this car the default setting or the normal mode that you should be driving on is comfort. That is when the suspension actually gives you the best insulation of the road imperfections. And then we have sports, and then we also have sports sharp or sports plus. So the difference between the sports and the sports plus is that while the suspension gets a little bit stiff, the sports plus actually gives you a louder exhaust note. The gear shifts from this 9-speed automatic transmission are very smooth, and now when you look at the power distribution between the front and rear wheels, this car has a rear bias system whereby more power is sent to the rear wheels, which I normally call the right wheels, and that's why when you pin the car hard, it feels like it's actually pushing you. The GLC43 has more than enough power for the average person in terms of driving dynamics, and it's actually easy getting in trouble when you're driving this car, especially with speed cops. So this is a car that inspires confidence into the driver, because you know you have some decent power at your disposal, hence you can make those quick overtaking moves. You are not going to be disappointed whatsoever on how this GLC43 handles and actually behaves in terms of power delivery, because when you look at this car, it's faster than 99.something% of the regular traffic that you are going to face, and it's a car that can actually get you into problems if you are not keen with it. And there is something I always say: when you have a powerful car, there is much more responsibility that comes with it when you compare it to a less powerful car, because sometimes it can actually inspire you to do things that should not be done on the road. Now, under normal driving conditions, you should be driving this car under comfort mode, but you can always switch to sports or sports sharp. And what sports sharp does, let me actually do it. It actually makes the car louder. You can see that throttle response is now actually sharper, and you can hear that loud exhaust coming from the back, and now the car becomes an absolute animal, because I have now jumped from that is 120 kilometers per hour, and I'm now sitting in the upwards of 150 kilometers per hour. So the GLC43 is going to reward you with decent driving manners, but you may also want to consider the rivals, because in this class, the GLC43 faces off with cars like the Audi SQ5, you have cars like the BMW X340i, and on the higher side, you can also look at something like the Porsche Macan GTS. Now, the main advantage of the Audi SQ5 and the BMW X340i compared to the GLC43 is, of course, the pricing advantage, because those cars are actually more affordable to purchase compared to the GLC43. For the Porsche Macan GTS, it's not a cheap car, but it rewards the driver with very good driving dynamics, and it has the sharpest driving dynamics in this group. So instead of the GLC43, you can also consider the BMW 40i with the B58 3-liter engine, or you consider the Audi SQ5, which now comes with a 3-liter turbocharged petrol engine. Initially, it used to come with a 3-liter supercharged petrol. When you're purchasing a Mercedes-Benz GLC43, you already know the existence of the GLC250, GLC300, or even the GLC220D. Why am I saying so? Fuel consumption should be the least of your worries when you're purchasing a car with a 3-liter bi-turbo V6, because it's a car that is crafted towards performance. If you drive this car enthusiastically, engaging sports or sports sharp frequently, your numbers will sit around 7 kilometers per liter. But if you drive this car under comfort mode on a long trip conservatively, you can register 9-10 kilometers per liter easily. So the fuel numbers you are going to get on this car are really dependent on how you behave behind the wheel. So if you purchase this GLC43 with the aim of registering Nissan Note e-Power fuel numbers, then you'll be setting yourself in for a huge disappointment. GLC43 is a car with a polarizing design and imposing presence. Everywhere whereby you'll be parking this car, it is a car that actually screams attention. So this is a car that is going to break necks and turn eyes wherever you are going to park this car. Because even when I'm shooting this kind of video, I've had to stop a couple of times because people are stopping maybe to admire the car. And now when you look at this 2020 facelifted version, it actually looks fresher and I'll say more appealing to the eye compared to the predecessor. It rides on these 20-inch wheels which have these big brake calipers, of course, and these rotors which are actually slotted, of course, to give you that maximum braking capability. The GLC is offered with two body variations. What I have here today is the crossover SUV, or some people can actually call it a wagon. This car can also be found with a coupe or a coupe, depending on how you will want to pronounce it. Now, the reason why I prefer the SUV is because the SUV is actually more spacious, especially on these back seats when you compare it to the coupe. So when you sit in the coupe, you are going to realize that the headroom is not that good, especially for tall people. And now that is the winning point of this SUV. And another thing you may want to learn about the coupe compared to this SUV is that the coupe doesn't come with this big panoramic sunroof. It only comes with the front smaller sunroof. So in terms of the body styling between the SUV and the coupe, it really depends on what you like. But for me, I think the SUV is the more practical car. But still, everyone has their own tastes and preferences. So there are actually very many people who are going to prefer the coupe over this SUV. The problem is that in the market, the coupe is actually more expensive than this SUV. This is the cabin of this 2020 GLC43, and you can tell it's a good place to spend your time in. Being a facelifted version, of course there are revisions that have been done to this interior, and you now have this new M-Box infotainment system. Of course in this car you're going to enjoy your music from this Burmester sound system, and I think this interior being a two-tone, that is red and black, gives this car some good character. So you have an electric tailgate, of course that is expected for this car. This is how the boot looks like, of course with some luggage inside. And now because this is an SUV, actually it gives you more trunk space compared to the coupe. And on this back side here, you have these levers for dropping these rear seats, of course if you want more space. And on this right side, you have the adjustment for the suspension of this car in case maybe you want the car to go low or actually to rise. Let's discuss something about the maintenance cost of the GLC43. Away from the fuel consumption being high, this is not a cheap car to maintain. So this is a car I'll not recommend to someone who doesn't have a good cash flow or someone who doesn't have a good running business. When you look at this car, everything looks expensive. When you look at the wheel size of this car, which is a 20-inch wheel and a low profile rubber, of course, you are going to find a genuine rubber is going to cost around 40,000-50,000 shillings. So if in case maybe you run into a puncture, it needs you to have some cash reserved somewhere. So that's why I'm saying it's not a car for the average person or the regular commuter. Another thing you may want to learn is that majority of these performance cars always need their wheels or rubbers changed as a set. That's why you can see you need some good money on the side. And that's why when you look at this car, it's not a kind of car I'll advise someone to purchase, especially kama wameangukia deal. Kwa sababu, you can purchase it but maintenance will be a problem. That's why we normally say purchasing a car is the easy part, but keeping it running is the challenge. That's why ukiangukia deal unue gari kama hii, alafu ikulemea kumaintain na kibahati mbaya ulikuwa umenunua na haya purchase, actually you can easily be auctioned, utachotwa. That's why recently mmeona hizi gari high end mingi watu wanachotwa, ni kwa sababu maintenance iko juu na sasa wanaitishwa malipo. So the reason this is not a cheap car to run ni kwa sababu ukiona maintenance iko juu, and maybe if you purchase your car on higher purchase terms whereby you should be paying some monthly installment na gari ikuwe na shida, hapo ni rahisi sana gari kuchotwa. So if you are not well off financially na maybe umeangukia deal, you better buy something that is maybe easier to run or easy to fix. That's why when you see this kind of cars, there are very many people who can afford this kind of cars but they don't purchase them. Wanaendea gari kama Prado ama Toyota etc. Ni kwa sababu maintenance can be scary, and now this kind of cars, they don't like someone who's not keen about maintenance, because also vile gari itakutreat, it also depends on how you maintain it, because if you neglect it, of course it's going to become a financial burden. This is a performance car which is actually technologically advanced. In case you run into a problem with this car and maybe you are up country, of course you need to carry it to Nairobi, or you need a flatbed to carry it to Nairobi, because this is not a car that is going to be attended by any Tom, Dick and Harry. So that's why I'm saying it's not a really cheap car to approach if maybe you don't have a good cash flow. So you can see this GLC43 is a fast car or a quick car for very many people, and there is no need actually going for the GLC63, because for you to extract the full performance of the GLC63, you actually need to go to the track, of which not many people are going to do that. So that's why when I'm looking at this car, I'm really looking at it like a perfect balance of performance and luxury. If you go for the GLC63S, that means you need at some point to go to the track, of course, to extract its full performance. That's why I was saying initially, this car has utilizable power. It doesn't look like that car whereby you're going to purchase and maybe you're going to underutilize it, or maybe you're not going to exploit its full potential. The GLC43 is not a cheap car to purchase, especially this facelifted 2020 version, because you need around 7.5 to 8 million shillings to get into one. Of course, I've seen even cars crossing the 8 million mark in the market. Now, that is the problem that comes about with facelifts, because for the previous case, you could actually purchase a 2018 GLC43 with around 6.5 million shillings. In this case, you now need $1 million extra to get into this facelifted version. So that is the challenge with facelifts, because when they come about, they actually affect the price of the car. Because even for the GLC 300, that is the one with a 2-liter, which is an upgrade from the 250, it's now going for around 7 million shillings. Early last year, we scouted a fully loaded GLC 250 with around 5.6 million shillings. Currently, you need an extra 1 million shillings to get into one. So you can see, while facelifts actually give cars a fresher look, they also come with that pricing disadvantage. The GLC43 is a car that blends performance, luxury, and comes out as an executive package that is going to scream attention wherever you go. Those people who can afford this car are actually going to enjoy it. That is the end of this short video for today. Bye for now, guys. See you on the next one.